Hey, what's happening, everybody? My name is Haydn Adams, and in this tutorial, I want to show you how to make a perfect crop in Photoshop. Now, this applies to web design and development because I want to leave no spare pixels outside of my picture, because then pictures will look uneven when I bring them into my web design and I have to work on margins and padding. Oh my. So I want to show you two ways to make a perfect crop. I have this picture right here with this image and it's blurred, so it doesn't show me the perfect outline by default. And I'm going to show you the two ways of doing that right now. All right, welcome back. What's up, ADWC Nation? Once again, I'm Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes. Now, we're in Photoshop and we're talking about coding, which at first sounds a little strange. But if you're thinking about it, if I were to place two pictures side by side on a web design, and one has about 4 or 5 pixels of white space and one doesn't, I have to manually write and fix that later in code. And if you've ever talked to any Photoshop or any professional photographers out there, it's always good to get the shot right first in the software in Photoshop, or if you're taking a picture, then to, as they say, fix it in post, which is the equivalent to add inline margins and padding inside your code. So we're kind of coming back to Photoshop to make sure we get a good picture from the very start. So I said there's two ways in which to make a perfect crop. And one way is in Photoshop 2020. I've been wanting this for I don't know how long. So just so you know, I'm in Photoshop version 21.2.1. This is version 2020. I'm in August of 2020. So if you don't have the latest version, you won't get this. And I want to say that the Adobe headquarters have read all of my telegrams, because this is one of my biggest issues that I've had for a long time, is that I want to snap to crop, but I want to snap to crop on an image like this whereby it doesn't have a fixed edge. That's been my biggest part of contention, is that in the past, they haven't let me just crop it perfectly based upon the pixels on the layer. Now they have. So if I hit C for crop, and what I'm also using, just so you're aware, so the crop tool is over here on the left-hand side, or C for crop, and I always use the classic mode. To me, when I use the unclassic mode, I then have to move these pieces in, and it's just, I really have never liked the new and improved version of the crop tool. Maybe I'm old school, but to me, I love just the classic mode through and through and through. So as an FYI, I am having classic mode turned on. So if I turn it off for a second, hit C for crop, now what I can do is I can click and drag this picture. But check this out. This is new in 2020, and this makes my life so much easier. If you notice, there's a little bit of different color gradation between the ring around the picture and the area not inside that layer. So when I move my crop tool, it now clicks and locks on the edges of that ring. So now what I can do is, by simply moving the 4 sides, click, 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 all 4 sides, and I do have where I do say use classic mode and also match canvas. So what I'm going to do is hit return, and I made a perfect crop because I actually did do a Gaussian blur before this inside my layer 1, but now this is cropped perfectly. So while you can't see the actual edges, and if I were to hold, and let's actually do a black background, notice that it did a perfect crop outside. And it's hard to see the 50% darker on the screen, I know, because we're recording, but it made a perfect crop around that picture using the crop tool. So this is one way of cropping this picture in a way that's perfect using the crop tool. But what if we use a different way that even doesn't use the crop tool to crop? Let's do that with number 2. So the second way is not to use the crop tool to crop, which sounds counterintuitive, but it actually is. So I reverted back my picture back to square one. And what I'm using is I'm using a layer mask on layer one to essentially put this picture inside of layer one. The reason why I do that is that I'm a fan of non-destructive Photoshop whenever possible. So if I decide, you know what, that picture needs to go over this way or this way or this way, I'm not damaging this picture. I can always move it around to wherever I want to make it. So as an FYI, I am a big fan of non-destructive Photoshop. And how I got this is holding the Option key. I can turn off this layer, or I can turn it on by holding the Option key, and it nests it down below. And because that layer one, if I turn it off for 1 second, is just black and white, it works as a layer mask. So if I turn it back on and go there. So the second part of cropping is actually not using the crop tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Command key down, and you'll notice that my little hand over here on layer one actually includes a marquee. Now it does show a rectangular marquee, which is kind of counterintuitive because it's a circle, but in theory, all crops are rectangular. So hence the marquee or the marching ants around the hand. I'm holding the Command key on the Macintosh. I'm going to click on the icon and notice what happens. The marquee goes into a circle, which again is counterintuitive because it showed a square. However, what I want it to do is I want it to capture the inside and outside. Now the marching ants lie to you. If you've never been told that, now I'm telling you this once and for all. The marching ants, as we call them, inside this little marquee area, only capture 50%. Now, what does that mean by 50%? If it's 50% or darker, the marching ants go inside. If it's 50% or lighter, the marching ants don't show what's really being selected. So again, the marching ants lie to you, and I'll show you, because if I I click the Q key for quick mask, it's not so much used anymore as much, but it really tells you all you need to know about the crop. So if I hit Q, notice now where my red is. My red indicates what's not being selected, and it shows what is being selected. So notice where the marquee is right here, but the quick mask or the real selection you can't see via the marching ants marquee is out here. That's good. Check this out. So now that I know that I'm actually cropping, or I will be cropping out here because my selection goes to the outside. And if I zoom out, there is my quick mask. So the quick mask tells me what is being selected versus what is not being selected when the marching ants lie to you. So awesome, we have a selection that we can use to crop. Now there is no shortcut key, which Adobe, if you're listening, I would love this shortcut key maybe sometime in the next decade because I use this tool so often. And if anyone's listening from Adobe, please get the memo to them. Okay, back on. I'm gonna head up to Image and crop. Once again, there is no shortcut key. This is one of the few menus that I have to go to up and crop. Now when I click on crop, watch what happens. It crops. It doesn't crop to the marching ants, but it crops to where the end of the selection is, thus making a perfect crop that you couldn't see. We could do it via the crop tool, but I just did it once again by clicking on an image over here on the left, and now it's cropped perfectly without me having to use the crop tool. I let Photoshop understand where the last bit of pixels I can't really see, and I made a really strong pixels blur, and that's how I can do a perfect crop without using the crop tool. But I want to show you one more instance because this is one graphic. What if I have two pictures I have to crop? All right, so a little bit of a bonus here. In our last example, we looked at how to crop it via the marquee tool by holding down the Command key. And that's great if I want to crop one, but if I try to crop two, it goes either to this bottom right one or to this top left one. How do I solve that? This is the magic of keystrokes. So what I want to do is that if I select, hitting Command D to deselect both, I'm going to start on the top. Now I should probably name these because I have two layers. So I'm going to say top left layer mask and bottom right layer mask, just so I don't get the two confused. In the top one, I'm going to start holding the same thing down. I'm going to hold the Command key down and click on the icon. That little marked key icon shows up, and now the selection comes into play. I want to add to this selection by coming and selecting this image as well. Here's the trick. When I click on this icon down below, I'm going to first hold the Command key, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key. And the Shift key adds a plus. And what that means is it's going to add to the selection that I'm making on the screen. So if I hold down the Command key on my Macintosh and the Shift key, now note I have two selections. Here's the great part. The selections form an invariable rectangle around these images. So when I go to Image Crop, they crop both pictures perfectly. What this means is I don't have to worry about adding any margins or padding to my design to make sure it fits perfectly. When I use these two methodologies, either the crop tool and dragging around in version 2020, or if you have a previous iteration or 2020, you can use the Command key to create perfect crops in Photoshop. I'm also curious, have you used this before? Will this help you in your web design development? Is this something you've used before? If so, drop me a comment down below. I'd love to hear if this helps you in your web development and web design workflows. As always, I'm Haydn Adams with A Designer Who Codes. Ready to continue becoming a better web designer through code? Check out more of my videos through my channel, A Designer Who Codes. Thanks so much for watching.